Good morning, all. Today we have for our cybersecurity business series that I have started. We have Mark Dorsi. Um, he will be introducing himself. So I'll leave it to him for the introduction. But he has is extreme lot of experience in security, being a security practitioner and all. So Mark, thank you. Thanks for giving time to talk to us. It would be great if you can describe about your current role and the experience in the security industry you have.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, appreciate you having me on today. Yeah, I'm the CISO currently at Netlify, and I'm a startup specialist. And so I've spent my entire career helping startups in one way or another realize all their hopes and dreams. I currently spend about 5 hours a week. I just dedicate it to all those founders out there in the world that are, trying to bring their product to life. And I'm hoping to make the world a better place, one conversation at a time.
Perfect. That's great to hear. So, Mark, as you see, the Gen AI revolution has been increasing, and the adoption has been increasing day by day. Today only, we are hearing lot of things about DeepSeek. What do you think this Gen AI revolution, the adoption and the hype that has been created with the Gen AI adoption, is this? Do you think this is worth the hype, or is this like a something which like blockchain or something that is going to come and then just go away?
No, I think it's absolutely transformative. I mean, in our day in, day out, every single day, I mean, if you speak with a number of folks who are able to quickly adopt, right, and then implement, that's the quickest path, right? Blockchain has got its own set of challenges as far as the ability for an individual to adopt. But Gen AI, right, is right away. Like anybody can jump in, start to use it, even in its most basic case, right? And so as we see the world moving forward, right, it's an absolute must-have really for any business and even for individuals. You can look at Gen AI in one of two ways, and in AI in general, which is you can either choose to, sort of fear monger about it and worry about what it's going to do to you, your job, your future, whatever that might be. Or you can look at it a way as to really stand on its shoulders in order to really make the world a better place, right? And so it will be absolutely and has already been transformative. It just allows for everything to happen faster. If you think about it really with respect to cybersecurity in general, we can end up with things like faster threat detection, lots of predictive analysis, automated defenses, automated attacks, right? So all of those other sort of things come into play, and it's just going to be really critical to stay competitive, right? If the world is rapidly changing faster than humans can really get it done, then that evolving threat landscape is going to evolve faster than ever before, and we're already seeing that from an industry perspective.
Totally. So, as you already mentioned, there are like automated threats coming, automated. We are seeing a lot of automation getting really hyped or really getting adopted with Gen AI. So, with course of security threats, what are the major areas or where you see that the Gen AI adoption will be causing most significant security threats?
Yeah, I tend to look at this from that crawl, walk, run perspective,
Hmm.
whereas we're in the days of crawling. And with respect to adversarial sort of threats and those sorts of things, right? And so we're seeing some initial things around automated phishing attacks and some set of automated attacks and those sorts of things, and a lot of that is just because, right, there's instant gratification. If you look at back over the past 2 3 years, every attack has been some sort of social engineering attack. Not every, but the vast majority, some sort of social engineering attack, in which case a human was tricked into doing a thing. So the question is, for those low cost shots that can be taken by the attacker from just sort of the social engineering bits that have been working all along, can they just continue that sort of path? And so we're in that sort of kind of crawl implementation phase. What I really see though is that it can quickly go from crawl to walk and then to fly, like jump right over run and go straight to fly and teleport. And those are the days where I really feel like it's really going to end up kind of a Star Wars-esque, where it's going to be kind of the Clone Wars, right? In which case, how good are your defenses against the next, version of the attacks? And with all the different clones sort of coming after one another, I think time will tell whether or not they will resort back to humans as a part of the cycle. But It really will evolve quickly. We're already seeing the evolution just on a daily basis. I also run fraud and abuse at Netlify, in which case, we see all of these attacks real time as they get tilted up, and of course, all of them are some sort of social engineering attack today. The question will be, what will the attacks of tomorrow be, and really what we're going to be able to do. So as that does come forward, right, we're going to set up these automated defenses. You're going to adopt Gen AI. You're going to try and put together some sort of, blue team versus somebody's red team, right? You're going to have all of these sort of things. So then the question becomes, right, can you actually do things like data poisoning? In which case, your shields, right? Your shields are down because there's some sort of bug that's been introduced, right? Because they're actually attacking the defense so that they can lower your shields, maybe Star Trek-esque, right? And then weaponization, right? I've already kind of spoken about, but it's really is that phishing, deep fakes type thing where can you trick someone else in order to just resetting a token so that you can have carte blanche access, or so that your bots, more importantly, can have carte blanche access and really reduce the effective dwell time down to minutes, right, or seconds, because they've been able to really, sort of kind of launch this attack using automation versus what we used to have to do before, which is an attacker would come in, they dwell for a bit, try and figure out the network, figure out what's next to do, sort of footprint the entire environment, maybe have to sell onto somebody else, whatever else it might be. And so you really see that sort of that evolution there, so that dwell times have become shorter and shorter and shorter because the adversaries are really just automatons out there performing a set of tasks at a very fast, high rate of speed. And then the question being, right, is at the end of all of it, right, from a reverse engineering perspective, can you reverse engineer, the attacks, the AI that's in play, as well as be able to tilt up your own defenses in at a fast enough rate of speed?
Totally. So, as you see, right, Mark, security solutions has been in the in the industry for last 20 years or 25 years, whenever the internet started, and then security solutions we are just following up with them. And we have like network security, endpoint security, blah blah, application security, a lot of security solutions, big companies working on those. Do you think that the existing security solutions will be enough for or are sufficient for the risks that Gen AI adoption is bringing to the table?
I think in the very, very short term, we have some capabilities at our disposal around training and those sorts of things. Why do I think that? Because most of the attacks are the same attacks we've been seeing for years and years. Why are they the same attacks? Because they're extremely effective. There's some human you're going to attempt to trick. And the question is whether or not the human has the effective tools to really thwart that. So if you're talking about even in the short term, no, they're not going to be effective. Why? Because with deep fakes, whatever else is on the horizon, we just can't adapt as fast as we would like to these dynamic AI driven threats, right? Because they're learning at a high rate of speed, and our ability to stay up with that is going to require us to have those tools in order to detect at an even higher rate of speed, right? At least to try and match those threats
Totally.
and those vectors. As far as what we need those enhanced tools so that we can have some real-time analysis and be able to do adaptive learning on our own in sort of a safe manner, of course, so that we don't get tricked into blocking shots that aren't there and wasting resources and time on things that aren't actually active threats. But at the same time, right, if we can have some sort of integrated ML, anomaly detection, and sort of like an adversarial type testing that's constantly going on, then we can sort of be preemptive against what I consider to be the real sort of attacks, which is I look at all of these things as weather systems.
Mhm.
There's a weather system that can cause your particular geography an issue, right, or company. And so if you're out on let's say you're out on the island somewhere, you might be less concerned about tornadoes, but you're really concerned about potentially a tsunami, right? And so if you can have those tests and those sorts of things in place so that you are prepared, right, so you're doing actual preparation, then everything will be okay. I do still see though that the standard set of attacks are going to continue until we actually get really good at preventing them. So the question is, what set of tools will we put in defensively that will finally kind of thwart these age-old attacks, right? These aren't new attacks. This isn't something that somebody invented, this year or even this century. They go back right to the earliest times where you really can trick a human into doing something that you didn't intend. The question is now, can you trick the bot into doing something right as well? So what will happen with those clones?
Got it. Pretty good thoughts, Mark, on this. So, Mark, one other thing is like the major thing that security solutions are built on with a core thing is like even if let's say network, endpoint, application, or whatever security you take is the data, right? So everything that we are doing is to somewhere or somehow protect the data. So what do you think that what type of new avenues that this Gen AI adoption has opened where the data is kind of more vulnerable or data is kind of more can be more attacked? So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there's a real opportunity more than ever before to identify what the crown jewels are for any organization, or as you're referring to it, the data. Right? And those crown jewels are really the important thing to identify. The question is, what is the attacker interested in? Right? What are they trying to extract? Right? The attacker is trying to get something. Maybe it's for, espionage. Maybe it's for, their riches, right? To fill their coffers, whatever it is, right? But it's an age-old problem. You have something that someone else considers of value, right? With maybe a lessening degree, depending on what it might be, right? So do you understand what those things are, right? So that's an area for Gen AI in order to help you, right? Or some of these other more advanced platforms, right? And whether or not you know that, okay, there is an attacker, the probability of an attack, right? Or weather pattern in that particular case to hit us is this amount. So then you start to understand whether or not it's acceptable risk to take as an organization. You may or may not have something that's attractive to a third party. What do you have? Right. And so, what are those crown jewels that someone else is going to find value from? And so, in protecting that data, the question is whether or not you're going to spend your time on the correct things and whether or not those next versions of tools, Gen AI or otherwise, are going to be able to tell you the right things to prioritize for your particular organization based on the threats, right? That are the ones that are probably the ones that are going to attack you next, right? So what does that look like? What's the overall probability? So that's really where I see that.
Got it. So, apart from data, right? So, how do you ensure the ethical use of Gen AI in cybersecurity, particularly concerning privacy and biasness and all, right? Because that has raised a lot of concerns around the usage of Gen AI.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that it's the common concern across our entire industry at the moment. It's not just with respect to Gen AI. The big difference, though, is that you're going to end up with these models potentially learning and or having bias, whatever that might be, right? And how is it going to use that bias, either in a manner that is maybe to the benefit of the individual in question, right, or to the detriment, and which is the piece that we really are concerned with there. And so, you know, if you're going to audit models for bias and do that sort of thing, right? And we're going to have that in place. That means that there's going to need to be a suite of tools that are really able to give us the report on that bias, right? And just how biased the model may be, right? And so if you're taking a look at compliance with overall privacy laws and what that looks like, right, and what that latest set of laws might look like, some of those things can get easier because the models can, the testing mechanisms can actually learn and then take a look at that data and give you, sort of indication about what's going on. Now, that's interesting on an individual by individual company. But what we really need to make it to is sort of this federated idea now of learning, right? So those models that are performing that testing, it's really important to sort of break out of those silos and be able to take what was learned on company B 2 days ago and apply that to company C the next day so that we're continually improving. And that's really what's going to help us with some of these regulatory type things and the overall ethical use. Now, if you're going to attempt to build kind of diverse teams within your environment, right? As far as humans are concerned, you're likely going to do the same thing in a similar manner with respect to AI and design. And I think that that's a whole world of things that folks really aren't thinking about today is really these different models and how they're going to think about different problems. And then there's going to need to be some sort of interpretation, especially when it comes to privacy and law, which will be allow you to then have some pretty amazing interpreted results. And then of course we'll need to evolve the frameworks over time in order to meet sort of where the models have taken us.
Got it. So, as you and you have been a practitioner for long, so what strategies do you recommend for organizations to stay ahead of the adversarial AI attacks that are coming?
Yeah, I think that What's old is new. And so, good security practices are always the ones you want to have out there. Of course, you can do things like adversarial type training, and you can, to try and strengthen your overall, model from a Gen AI perspective and what you're going to do there. But I really think that the sooner that we can get, sort of the tools on our side in an active manner is really going to be what we're going to want to be, right? And so, in order to do that, we're going to need to end up with a lot of these sort of little AI agents out there in the world, really making our jobs and lives easier, because they can go out and they can perform individual tasks. I think the big challenge that we have is that today it's humans asking the questions, and it's humans, right, creating the prompts. What we really need to make it to a place of is, with all of the available data and analytics that are out there from a ability to learn perspective, we're going to want to, sooner rather than later, and at an increasing rate of speed, get those models trained, and then have the models really move forward. So you're going to end up with the model that's thinking about your overall attack surface all day and night, and then taking a look at what all the signals are that are bringing it in, and then making the next set of recommendations and or performing those defense measures actively, so that you end up with a preventative stance based on the overall weather pattern that's heading your way. Right. So that weather pattern, right? It might be summertime. And so the question is, right, is it, hurricane and fire season out on the islands, or is it maybe the spring and it's tornado season, right, elsewhere in the world? And so the question is whether or not you're applying resources, defenses, right, for that particular weather pattern at the right time. Sure, right? You can have, I don't know, a fire occur in I don't know, any time of year, right? But is it more likely to happen now or later, right? When should we be applying those resources? Because there's only so much money that can be applied to defenses at any one point in time. So strategies are going to have to take that into effect. We don't have unlimited resources. We're going to need to take a look at the weather, and then we're going to try and get very predictive with our analytics in order to apply defenses at the right time and right place.
Got it. So a follow-up question on that, right? So uh, as a CISO or as the head of the security in for a particular organization, what do you think? What taking you your example, or and what advice you will be giving to the CISOs that are going to be coming, and there will be a lot of security that will be the coming with our Gen AI adoption. So what do you think? What they should be doing? As you said, there is a limited budget, there is a limited resources. Apart from the prioritizations of the things when it is coming and all, what do you think? What they need to keep in mind to decide on a security solutions, or what they should do to combat or to fight this new threat vector that has coming with Gen AI adoption?
Yeah, it goes back sort of to some of the same concepts that we've already discussed, but it's determine what your crown jewels are, at least what you think they are, and try and figure out whether or not they're valuable, right, to an attacker, and then really work to understand your overall attack surface and how many hops it is to that crown jewel and what compensating controls you have, right? And if you're able to take that sort of approach, you're able to understand what those crown jewels are from the perspective of the attacker, right? Or potential set of attackers for companies of your size, your your cohort, whatever you want to take into account there. But really understand what that is. Then from there, you can take in and understand, okay, what type of technologies or controls do we need to put in place in order to avoid a compromise, balancing risk, right? You have to accept, you don't want to accept too little risk, otherwise the business isn't going to move very fast. You don't want to accept too much risk because then you might end up out of business. So the question is finding that happy medium. And I normally find that when folks focus on what their crown jewels are and sort of bring technologies in that will help them understand what their attack surface looks like, depending on what you're concerned about, you tend to be far more successful. All that said, get the basics right. So we
Totally.
want to make sure that we have really great access control in place, and that you're taking care of what I would consider to be table stakes for the industry at this point in time, right? Try not to be low hanging fruit across the board. And so when you are taking a look at these tools, right, will they help you with some of those? Maybe you consider them to be mundane tasks, right? So that you can focus on maybe some of the more advanced things that are setting up the tree. Right. And so that's kind of what we've seen over time. If you take a look back at sort of the evolution of maybe even the desktop, right, or your laptop, Back in the day, there were no EDRs, MDRs, XDRs. None of that stuff existed, right? You went through a set of things to try and secure it, and then you tried to patch it, right? Well, eventually on comes this thing who's going to try and help you do that. Well, that just extends out into the entire environment, whereas you're going to end up with more and more controls. Hopefully, it don't slow down your business so that your folks can work at speed. Right. And that's why some technologies are amazing to adopt. FIDO2, for example, allows your employees to work at speed and mitigates, quite a few phishing areas that folks would be concerned with, right? So it's a great thing to adopt, right? And also the employee finds it to be far, uh, without friction, right? So it's frictionless. In which case, that makes for a great story. We'll want more of those types of stories as we get deeper and deeper into the world of AI and what it can do for us.
Yeah, super amazing thoughts, Mark. So I really love that what you are saying, like prioritizing the things what you want to do, what is the need of the hour, and then trying to do things rather than just jumping around and looking at some flashing things. All right, so that's that. As a security budgets are not like unlimited; they have limited things and limited resources, everything limited. And so that what we should do is like what is the need of the hour at the same time, be frictionless, don't show more, otherwise your business stops, or show something which the business keeps running with the pace that the market is running at. So they're pretty good thoughts. So last question before we ramp up. So what advice, I'm co-founder of Swift Security, and we are working on data security as well as the how to safely enable Gen AI adoption. So what advice would you give secure to cybersecurity startups like us, which are focusing on Gen AI security and focusing on the data security with the new Gen AI adoption coming into picture?
Yeah, I think that so I typically give the same advice across the board, regardless of the startup. It's been this way for many years, which is I believe that startups really need to think about the outcomes that the people they're trying to help should be able to realize. What do I mean by that? Look, a CISO is a salesperson through and through. We go around the organization with a bunch of different pitch decks, trying to sell all of the folks, either internally, externally, or otherwise, on an idea, right? So that they'll spend their time on the thing that we would like fixed. And so if you thought about it in that way, you really thought in a couple of ways, which is what would it take for your technology, right? Or one of your screens to make it up in my board deck, in my executive staff deck, in my deck that I share with the CTO on where we are, right? Risk, whatever that might be. What would that look like so that you would help me make the sale? And you should really ask yourself one question, and as you're asking it to the CISO, which is, did I help you affect change in your organization with my product, right? And if not, why? And if so, why? So that you can continue to improve. And I think what you'll find is, for the most part, especially for someone like myself, I've been technical my entire career, right? But as a CISO, I need business-driven outcomes. I need to be able to tell the business how this is going to affect us, our bottom line, and why we should work on a thing today. They're not going to care about how many people are phishable in the organization. They want to know, sort of what we're doing from the overall human attack surface, right? Or whatever attack surface there might be in play. And so, from an overall vendor perspective or a third party perspective, I really want you all to think about business outcomes. What does that look like in practice? If you take it to where it should go, it's that the CISO should land because you spent your time to figure out who the CISO is in a place that has business driven outcomes. The technical person on the CISO's team, the security engineer, they should land somewhere else. That's talking about the active threats. And our partner who needs to do the implementation, the engineer, right, who's actually going to fix the code or perform, the update, whatever it might be, should land in a place so it's very apparent to them the overall impact they're going to have for the entire environment and how you're helping make their job, that much faster. So when they're speaking to each person, when they're speaking to somebody else in the organization, maybe it's their boss, maybe it's their partner, whoever it might be, they'll be able to come back and say, hey, we're going to do this amazing thing because of reasons. Not, hey, let's do this thing because someone else told us we need to do it. And those are two very different things. And at the end of the day, if you can find a way for my customer, right, external customer who's buying my product or service to really drive that conversation, you're going to make me far more successful in time because there'll be fewer gates, right, in order for me to get those things done because it's driven by the customer.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. Thank you. A lot of learning from you, and frankly, I do a lot of cybersecurity series, and this is one of the very much informative session I have. So pretty good learning. I am sure our viewers will be learning a lot from this session. So thank you. Thanks a lot for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate the time as well. Thank you so much for having me.